In this video, we'll be going over the top 5 heroes and how to play them. On number 5, we've got Scabbs. I like this hero the most in lobbies where it's difficult to find direction. These are lobbies where you do not have access to murlocs, beasts, or mechs. Usually a mix of those, sometimes all of them. Now, these three types provide for very easy game plans where murlocs you can make poisons, mechs there's a lot of tempo options where you can stay on tier 4, maybe triple into a Mega Buster, and with beast there's all kinds of compositions. We can either play tempo beast or we can play leapfrogger or goldrin or this or that. And these are compositions that usually don't require too many high tier cards, so they are very accessible. So a lot of heroes can quite reliably build a decent board when all of these types are in, or at least some of them. Now Scabbs really starts to shine when that easy build path is not available, because Scabbs' hero power allows you to stay on 1 for a longer time. Usually you will be playing a reform curve on this hero, which means you'll be leveling on 6 gold to tier 2 instead of 4 gold. This is because the money lines up really well, where on 5 gold you can buy a card and hero power, and then on 6 gold you can buy a card, hero power, sell, and still tier. This has 2 upsides. The first one is that it is far easier to get a triple this way. There just aren't a lot of different minions on tier 1. So with your hero power and rolling numerous shops, the likelihood of hitting a triple is just increased. This then allows you to get direction for your game, because when we have a triple, we can choose to hold it for a higher tier minion. Normally, I would say that that is not how you play the quest meta, because a lot of people are going to be happy to triple into a lower tier card, especially when murlocs are in, because it's much easier to just build a board and then switch into poison later. So especially when murlocs are out, it's far more rewarding to hold your triple and go for a higher tier minion that can scale your board. So something like a Darkgaze Elder, maybe an Eliza for the ixxdeee Pirates build, perhaps even a Nomi, depending on when you have to cash in on your triple. Nagas are also a good bet, Atissa and Orgazoa. The second advantage is that because you're on tier 1, you can load your hand with a bunch of cards and hold them for the quest turn. This is not something that you have to do every game, because sometimes it won't make sense based on how much money you have and who you're fighting and how much damage you'll be taking. But it's really good to at least experiment with this. You can get some really, really nasty quest turns where, say, your quest is to play 4 battle cries and you happen to have 2 battle cries in your hand, you steal a third one and the fourth one is in the shop. You could one-shot certain quests that are not supposed to be one-shot. In the mid-game, the hero power can provide a nice tempo boost by stealing a good tempo minion for a mere 2 gold. This happens a lot when you face someone that went to tier 3 early. You can steal a high tempo minion such as the Flecto or a Brute and use that tempo to continue leveling while you keep your triple locked in the shop. So that is highly synergistic. Some games, this is just not going to happen and you are losing too many fights and you will just have to settle for taking a 4 or a 5 drop and play a little bit more around the quests. But more often than not, you will be able to get away with grabbing a 6 drop due to stealing good cards. Once you're past the mid game where you already have your direction, you know what you are playing, the value of hero powering does go down a lot, because at this point a lot of opponents will have their own strategy going and a lot of those cards are not going to make sense for you even at a discounted price of only 2 gold. You would really want to look at your next opponent's board and ask yourself if it makes sense to hero power. Now in the very late game, the hero power starts making sense again, because now a lot of what's on your opponent's board will be tech cards. This means Leroy, Mantid Queen, Selfless Hero, Baron, Nadina, All these cards that could be very, very useful for you. Next up, we've got Togwaggle. I like this hero the most in lobbies where tier 3 is strong. This means that we want to have access to mechs and Quilboar. That's because all the tier 3 mechs and Quilboar are very good. On top of that, if we have access to demons and Nagas, it becomes a very good tier 3 lobby. This is because demons have Overseer, which is an amazing card to get very early on, especially on Togwaggle, and almost all tier 3 Nagas are at least decent or good. Now, a really nice bonus on top of that is for Beasts and Murlocs to be out, because they have weak 3-drops. So, as you may have guessed, the preferred curve with Togwaggle is to go tier 3 on turn 3. If you can start with an economy piece, so a Salamental, an Alley Cat, or any type of card that gives you access to extra money, Swabby also works, you can go tier 3 on turn 3 but still have a unit left. This then allows you to sell your card so that you can hero power on turn 4. Your hero power costs 7 gold on this turn, but if you have that extra money, you can then hero power and take the entire shop, which is very good. Now, if you don't have an economy piece, it can be better to stay on tier 2 and save your hero power for later if you have a good tier 2 shop. If you don't have a good tier 2 shop, it's totally fine to still go to tier 3 early, because presumably we've picked Togwaggle with good 3-drops in, and you can still just hero power on the 7 gold turn instead. Now, the reason I like Togwaggle is because his hero power is very good at completing certain quests. Adding X amount of cards to your hand, summoning X amount of minions, or playing X amount of minions of a certain minion type. Now, it's important to note that the hero power does not interact with the buy quest, so be careful when you pick that one. As you can see in this game, the hero power allowed me to cheese my quest, adding 10 cards to my hand over the course of 2 turns, unlocking an early red hand. This then gives me a ton of tempo, allowing me to level and finding cards to scale with. Now, what are some of these scaling cards you are looking for? There are a few cards that interact very favorably with the Togwaggle hero power. The first one is Peggy, +1/+1 on a pirate for every card added to your hand. That ramps up very quickly when you are hero powering almost every turn. Darkgaze Elder is another good bet, because the hero power allows you to spend more money in total that you would be able to spend without it. You can hero power for 8 or 9 gold, buy the whole shop, and then still sell the cards in your hand to spend way more than the normal 10, 11, or 12 you would normally spend on a different hero. Especially if the shop you hero powered contained economy cards, this gets very silly very fast. The last one, which is my personal favorite on this hero, is Caligos. I don't really play Caligos on many heroes these days, but somehow I pretty much always end up in Caligos on Togwaggle. And this is because you can hero power a shop full of battle cries, which is far more efficient than on a different hero where you have to buy them one by one. On that note, I also go to tier 6 more often on Togwaggle. This is because the tier 6 shop is bigger. It contains 6 minions instead of the 5 that you have on tier 4 and tier 5. On number 3, we've got Lich B. The most important type for Lich is demons. If demons are out, I will not treat Lich as a super premium hero because I think she's a little bit too risky for my consistent playstyle. However, she's still very good on average, so don't be too deterred from picking her when demons are out. But when demons are in, it's a very easy pick. And this is because Karath makes your hero power completely free. Normally Lich takes 4 damage every time she hero powers, but Karath makes you immune, making that completely free. So that is an amazing upside to have, and by far the best unit for you to find in the early game. So what is the curve we're going to follow to get there? Well, on turn 1, we're going to level. Lich is the first hero ever to be able to do that. She has access to 5 gold on turn 1, and Tyrion costs 5, so very straightforward. On turn 2, you have the option to buy 2 units with the 6 gold you have after hero powering, or level straight to 3. Both are valid. I like buying the 2 units more if it's a strong pair of units, especially if we are buying a pair and we have some triple potential later. But I'll also be very happy to say buy a Yrel and a Surat, just some good tempo units that are going to keep me healthy throughout the early game. If you can't find those good minions, it's totally fine to just go straight to tier 3 on turn 2, which is very fast. Then on turn 3, we have 3 different options. The first one is we stayed down on tier 2 last round, so now we're just going to level for the 5 gold we have and no hero power. The second option is we went to tier 3 and we find a decent shop where we buy a card, hero power, buy another card, or buy a card, hero power, roll, buy another card, because we'll have access to 7 gold instead of the 5 you'd normally have on this turn. The last option is a very risky one, but sometimes the right play is to hero power up to 7 gold and just level straight to tier 4. Now, if you are learning Lich, I would not advise this curve because you have no room for error. You need to make the right decisions from there on, or you will die very, very quickly. So be careful with going tier 4 on turn 3. But if you have a really bad shop, it might be safer on average to level and then have access to higher tier units to stabilize faster. Now, on the 7 gold turn 5, this is usually the last turn I'm going to hero power because the money lines up nicely where you have 7 gold, hero power increases that to 9, which means we can just buy 3 units, or we can go to tier 4 if we haven't already and buy another card. If you've found Karathnathir, you're very free to hero power every turn, of course. From this moment on, Lich is fairly straightforward. She just gives you a very good start. You're usually going to be a turn ahead of the competition, but her hero power doesn't really change the way how you play from here on out. The main thing you're going to look at is when do you want to take more damage to get that 2 extra gold. Now, the later we are in the game, the less that matters. So unless you think you're going to take extra damage because you didn't hero power to buy a unit to make your board stronger, I usually like saving the 4 health because it can absolutely make the difference, especially if the 4 damage is going to put you below the 15 health threshold. On number 2, we've got Brann. Minion types are incredibly important when you decide to pick Brann. Ideally, we have access to beasts and murlocs. Beasts because Alley Cat is an amazing tier 1 battlecry that triples when you only find 2 copies of them, because with the Brann we summon 2 tabby cats with 1 Alley Cat, making it very easy to make a golden tabby cat. Murlocs provide Rockpool Hunter, which help you get your Brann, and an assortment of options in the mid-game with Primal Fin, Swolefin, and all the nice Murloc battlecries that you can use in combination with your Brann. We want at least 2 extra battlecry minions on tier 1 in our game. Nagas and Pirates are the best because they provide economy. The tier 1 Naga gives you points and Swabby makes leveling cheaper. Getting a triple of either of these minions will give you an amazing boost going into the mid game. Quillboar, Demons, and Elementals also provide a battlecry, but they are less good because they do not give you economy early in the game. If you don't have access to Murlocs or Beasts, you can still have a good Brann game as long as you have a minimum of 4 battlecry minions on tier 1, and 5 would be the best, of course. In terms of the curve, we are going to stay on tier 1 until we get our Brann. It's for this reason that it's very important to have that assortment of tier 1 battlecry minions in our lobby. Ideally, we get the Brann by turn 4. This is the quest turn. It is very good to hold as many Battlecry cards as you can in your hand for that turn, as you will get twice the effect of the Battlecry due to the Brann being on the board on that turn, and you might get some extra advancement on your quest. Brann is all about spiking hard around turn 4 to 5 with a triple and using that tempo to then push tier 4 and build a nice board. I will generally hold my triple for a 4-drop, specifically looking for Primal Fin, Reef Explorer, or Jug. These are all very nice options. On tier 4, you will generally then transition into a Murloc heavy board, picking up a ton of good Murloc Battlecries, but sometimes you will deviate, you will find a lot of Jugs, maybe a Crackling Cyclone with a Smogger, maybe a Hydra to buff with your Jugs, or you might triple into a 5-drop, get an Agam, and then use the Brann to get more gems. There are a lot of options available for you as Brann. Most of the time, you'll be playing Murlocs. And for number 1, we have Bruk'han. When do we want to pick Bruk'han? I pretty much never skip this hero. I will say, in a lobby with mechs in, he's better because the hero power option that deals 1 damage to the enemy board really counters Divine Shields. But that is not the reason that I pick Bruk'han all the time. The reason is that this hero has some amazing quest potential. The hero power option that spawns 4 extra elementals during the combat is absolutely brilliant for a number of quests. Any quest that has as a requirement summon X amount of minions, have X amount of minions die during the combat, or trigger X amount of death rattles is incredibly easy with Bruk'han because you spawn 4 additional tokens during the combat and you add 4 death rattles to your minions in order to do so. The preferred curve for Bruk'han is to stay on tier 2 on 5 gold instead of going to tier 3 early. In this particular game, you can see that I stayed on tier 2 even though the options weren't great. This is because I really want to have access to 4 minions when the quest turn rolls around so I can immediately take full advantage of my hero power. In some of your games, you're going to be offered a very high-end quest reward for a really cheap price due to how good Bruk'han is at completing these quests. This can be Cooked Book, Pilfered Lambs, Wisdom Ball. If this happens, it's almost a free win as you can go all in on a very, very nice quest reward early on in the game. Sometimes, however, you will get a more modest quest reward paired with the summon or have X amount of friendly minions die, but that is still very good. This usually means that you'll be able to speedrun this quest. We're talking completing Red Hand in 2, maybe even 1 turns. Maybe you get a Ritual Dagger over the course of 1, maximum 2 fights. There are a ton of tempo options that you can get extremely early access to. The game plan in this case is to not all in on the quest, but to use the tempo of the quest to be able to tier up, find high tier minions to build around, and win the game like that. Examples can be Mega Buster or Dark Ace Elder, or any other really nice high tier card that you can have early access to because you were able to level due to all your free tempo from the early quest. In the worst case scenario, there is no quest with one of these requirements. If that happens, you can still high roll a different quest. You may have a spawn on your board and you have to increase the stats of your board. You might have to buy 5 battle cries and you already have 2 battle cries in your shop. So you can still have a really nice game even if you don't get one of these requirements. Now, if none of these things happen, you can still play a more modest game where you are going to aim for a Poison Scam setup or a tier 4 Deflectabot setup, and then next time Bruk'han rolls around, it is highly likely that you do high roll and you get a very high placement. Lastly, I would like to share some tips and tricks for the hero powers. First, we'll talk about the taunt option. I really like to use this early on because it will give you a lot of tempo and almost guarantee that you win your first few rounds. This is particularly good with a trickster because it will increase the health of the trickster and taunt it at the same time. There's also some nice synergy with the Victim Spectre quest because you can increase the odds of copying the right minion by taunting the ones you don't want to copy. The Death Rattle hero power has some amazing avenge potential. If you get an early Mechano tank or light spawn, you can really abuse this. The 1 damage option is really good against almost any mech opponent because you will hero power away some shields, and a lot of the time versus elementals as well to remove shields from crackling cyclones. The double attack option is very nice if you have your own Deflectobot or Hydra or any other cleave, but also if you have a Taragosa. Taragosa keeps all the attack buffs or any other buffs she gets during the combat, and this is no exception. You can build a quasi-poisonous Taragosa very quickly with this option. That's it. We've reached the end of the video. As you may have noticed, I am experimenting with quite a few different things in this video. Not every segment has been edited in the same way. Some of them have the endgame composition in there. Others really just focus on the early game. Some are heavily sped up, others not so much. I'm learning this editing thing, so please feel free to let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you would like different for the next video. As per usual, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a ton. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.